on the technological, sort of the strategy side, with offering your album for something like 99 cents on Amazon, keeping it there, and focusing on other revenue streams, but while still staying on a major label. Do you find that interesting in any way? Do you think it's something that other artists or replicators just totally like meet, dress, or include?
I didn't understand the question. Yeah, no, I think the more that entertainers think of themselves as entrepreneurs, the better off everyone's going to be. I'm sure that most entertainers are much more close to their fans and understand what their fans want than their record labels. The problem with the record labels is they're like venture capitalists, right? They throw a whole bunch of money in the face of the entrepreneur or the musician. It's tempting, the entrepreneur and the musician take it, and then all of a sudden they're not in control of their business or their career anymore. So you gotta be really careful.
So, again on the labels, I can't think of any particularly recent examples in the past 2 or 3 years, but in a few instances there have been record labels directly investing in digital music startups. As someone who is an early stage investor, would you advise against that in all cases, in some cases? Do you think that that's a good strategy for startups to take money from the labels?
If you could give the record industry 10% of your business and not have to pay huge upfront fees and licenses, then that'd probably be a good trade to make. But I don't think that the music industry is offering those kinds of deals. I think, generally speaking, I don't like to see small companies sell equity to large companies because I think that they have very divergent interests. And the one good thing about venture capitalists is they're usually aligned with the entrepreneurs about what they want the end game to be. Whereas I think a lot of strategic investors aren't, or at least they're confused about what they think they want the end game to be. So generally speaking, I don't think it's a good idea, but in the specific case of licensing music, if you could get away with getting all your rights for some reasonable amount of equity, I think that would be a reasonable thing to do.
Do you think that you would invest more in music-related startups if there weren't this kind of omnipresent shadow of the labels and the problems that the label and startup relations have caused in the past decade and a half of digital music?
What I think should happen is I think that there should be a compulsory license for all forms of content, meaning that content owners should be required to license their content for digital and other forms of distribution, and the people who distribute it should be required to pay. There's only one form of media where that actually exists, and that's in quote-unquote internet radio. So if your music service is like Pandora, where you fit a very specific definition and it looks and feels like traditional radio, then there's a compulsory license that you have to make music available for those services, and there's a law that says how much you get paid for that. And I think it'd be great if we did that for everything: movies, TV shows, books, magazines, every form of content, so that one, the content creators know they're going to get paid, and two, the entrepreneurs know that they can create amazing services with all the relevant content in it. My partner Albert said something to me about a year after we made our investment in Kickstarter, and I was talking to him about it, and I said, it's amazing how this thing has taken off. I don't totally understand it. And he said, well, if you think about digital content, the marginal cost of another unit of digital content is zero. So economic theory would suggest that the value of an incremental unit of digital content will also be zero. And he said, so that means that if you're going to create digital content, you have to monetize it before you create it. You need basically to say to the marketplace, if you're Jay-Z, you need to say, I want 50 million to make my next record, and if you all give me 50 million, I'll make my next record, and then once I make it, I'll give it away to the world for free. Now, that's there's some absurdity in that statement, I understand, but the basic kind of paradigm shift that my partner Albert was proposing to me actually is pretty provocative and pretty interesting. And I do think that artists, not just musicians, but all kinds of artists are getting $25,000, $50,000 advances these days
on Kickstarter to create their projects, and then after they create their projects, they have the right to monetize them in whatever way they want. So I'm not saying Kickstarter is going to change the world. I'm saying that people need to be thinking differently in the way that Barry and Yancey and Charles were when they created Kickstarter about new models that work in the digital world as opposed to the old models that work in the analog.